Thank you for returning to review part 2 with me. This part of the lecture covers some very interesting claims about corporate patented technology not of this world. While this has been claimed for some time, it's very interesting to see it still happening in plain sight today. Former Blink-182 singer Tom DeLonge's UFO research organization keeps giving us reasons to take it more seriously. The group, called To the Stars Academy, just signed an agreement with the U.S. Army in which it will help the military study and develop advanced materials for the purposes of developing active camouflage, beamed energy propulsion, and quantum communication for use on military vehicles. The government is interested, specifically, in studying inertial mass reduction, a type of far future propulsion, mechanical structural metamaterials, electromagnetic metamaterial waveguides, quantum physics, active camouflage quantum communications, beamed energy propulsion. If this content intrigues you, I invite you to subscribe to The Storyist, where we explore just how deep the rabbit hole goes with the UFO alien phenomena.
Of War, Cordell Hull, Secretary of State, Harry S. Truman, who was head of a Democrat committee having to do with the funding of what was called then the War Office. Remember, there was no Department of Defense, there was no Pentagon, there was no Area 51. It was Washington, D.C. and the Capitol. They were all 33rd degree Masons. And there are sub-stories to this about how those men knew a lot, but they were used to keeping secrets. And they decided that this had to be a secret to be kept. Much of the content in those early reports was drawn from what Lieutenant General Nathan Twining discovered on his secret mission for President Truman soon after the New Mexico crashes. That's when General Twining viewed the 5 alien bodies and craft found at Landing Zone 2 near Oscura Peak and the Trinity site at White Sands. In 1947, General Twining was commander of the Air Materiel Command. 10 years later, President Eisenhower would appoint him chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. By July 16, 1947, only 1 week after the Roswell Daily headline, General Twining sent President Truman this 2-page report about what he saw for himself at the Landing Zone 2 crash site near Oscura Peak on the White Sands Proving Ground. Quote, upon examination of the interior of the craft, a compartment exhibiting a possible atomic engine was discovered. In the power room was a donut-shaped tube approximately 35 feet in diameter, made of what appears to be a plastic material that is surrounding a central core. This tube was translucent, approximately 1 inch thick. The tube appeared to be filled with a clear substance, possibly a heavy water. This activation of electrical potential is believed to be the primary power to the reactor, though it is only a theory at present. Just how a heavy water reactor functions in this environment is unknown. On the deck of the power room, there are what resembles typewriter keys, possibly reactor power plant controls. There were no conventional electronics, no wiring to be seen connecting these controls to the propulsion turret. Now, I was told in the 80s about these strange keys that were found in one of the crashes. And I was told that they were discussed by people who were there and retrieved as looking like strange hieroglyph-type symbols. Think of Egypt. Those are hieroglyphs. Tibet, for example, would be lines and dots. Hieroglyphs, think of Egypt. The 1952 MJ-12 first annual report said, quote, the technology may be eons ahead of us. meaning thousands of years beyond us on Earth. Another military insider from World War II and the Eisenhower and Kennedy presidencies did a 1997 book entitled The Day After Roswell about what he knew firsthand of UFO extraterrestrial technologies and ETs while working in the Pentagon. Lieutenant Colonel Philip J. Corso worked as chief of the Pentagon's Foreign Technology Desk for General Arthur Trudeau. Trudeau was handpicked by President Dwight Eisenhower in 1958 to be director of the first Army Research and Development Program in the Pentagon, and Corso told me directly from General Trudeau to Colonel Corso that when General Eisenhower came to General Trudeau, they had both known each other during World War II as generals. And General Eisenhower respected General Trudeau the most of all of the military leaders that he knew, because General Trudeau at that time was the only general that had a PhD, and General Trudeau's PhD was in chemistry, a very unusual combination in a high-ranking military officer. And Colonel Corso said, General Trudeau told me that when General Eisenhower, who became president, contacted General Trudeau, he said, quote, I consider the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States to be an enemy, equal an enemy as our Russian spies, because I think it is filled with Russian spies. And when he said that, he said he explained to General Trudeau that that was why he wanted everything related to extraterrestrial technology and the back engineering to be handled only by General Trudeau, an Army general that President Eisenhower trusted. General Trudeau, on the right, handpicked Colonel Corso after their trusted days together in World War II. Colonel Corso told me that he met with General Trudeau in his Pentagon office, where the general went over to 5-drawer filing cabinets, had Corso come over, pulled open one of the top drawers, said, look, and pulled out what ended up being some kind of a laser projection device, picked up what we now would know as semiconductor chips, picked up various things from inside this file cabinet, as the general told Colonel Corso, your job is going to be to hand deliver these ET technologies to corporate leaders that he, General Trudeau, had personally contacted, and that those would be the only person, no matter how big the company, only one person would know that they came from UFOs, extraterrestrials, and that it was technology that we were desperate to back engineer. And this became this huge goal. If you patent in the United States and you put some sort of a corporate logo on it, you are outside of Congress, you are outside of the government, you are protected by laws in the United States, and that was their goal, get everything they could that was extraterrestrial into the secret hands of corporations that could be patented, and no one, no taxpayer would have any right to any information from the government. And no one in Congress, no one in the Supreme Court, and let alone the taxpayers in the United States, would know anything about what was happening since World War II. General Trudeau and Colonel Corso were the beginning of the United States' serious efforts to develop a secret space program. Yes, it has existed since the end of the 1950s, that would use retrieved extraterrestrial technology for advancement. Meanwhile, NASA, under CIA control, NASA has always been birthed under the umbrella of the CIA, despite its presentation to the world as being a public agency. NASA would be the public camouflage for what was behind the scenes, a dark and growing underbelly of America, spending trillions of secret dollars, but unknown and untouchable. In June 1997, Time magazine did a cover story on the 50th anniversary of the Roswell crashes, and I was there to speak for that 50th commemoration. There I met and talked with Colonel Corso about his work for General Trudeau, and when Colonel Corso was introduced to me, he extended his hand to shake mine, and he said, "Linda, how the hell did you get so much classified information?" And I laughed because all of my information had come from real ranchers and real people in the human abduction syndrome, showing that our government did not have control over everything that was happening between an alien presence and the general public. And he meant the animal mutilations that I had investigated from my TV documentary, A Strange Harvest, that was first broadcast May 28, 1980 on Denver's CBS station KMGH-TV, where I was director of special projects. That's when sheriffs and ranchers told me the perpetrators of the bloodless, trackless animal deaths were, quote, creatures from outer space, close quote. Ranchers had seen glowing lights in night skies emit beams down into their pastures. A few had even seen a cow lifted up in a beam of light or lowered to a pasture dead and mutilated. But none of those eyewitnesses would stand up in front of my TV camera for fear of ridicule from their fellow human beings. Before he died, Colonel Corso talked to me in private about the highly classified documents he had read in Washington, D.C., dated as early as 1951, 1951, about animals found in several parts of the world with bloodless excisions and no tracks around them. Colonel Corso said the classified reports that he read specified that the perpetrators of animal mutilations were, and these were the words he used, extraterrestrial biological entities. But why? This illustration is by a Missouri horse rancher in 1975 who saw this glowing being at his gate during a time when he found several newborn foals and young horses bloodlessly mutilate in his pasture. Eventually, our government would realize that many of the UFO pilots and other non-human entities were cloned androids or human ET hybrids produced from genetic harvests from Earth life, including animal mutilations and human sperm and egg extractions during abductions. Our government, according to Colonel Corso, learned that in spite of the mutilations and abductions, some ETs really are friendly, and they want humanity to advance faster to be more protected from unfriendly, hostile ETs. So there was urgency in General Trudeau's goal to get alien technologies back engineered and patented as fast as possible, to keep them from Germany and Russia, and to support a secret space program that might have to, quote, do battle in real Star Wars, close quote. About secret ET technology transfer to American corporations for back engineering and patents, Colonel Corso wrote, General Trudeau also had relationships with the Army contractors who were developing new weapon systems for the military within a small part of any given company, while another part was harvesting some of the same ET technology for consumer product development. These were companies such as Bell Labs, IBM, Monsanto, Dow, RCA, that became General Electric, and the aviation and medical companies of Howard Hughes, close quote. At that July 1997 50th anniversary conference, Dr. Jesse Marcel Jr. handed me this replica of the thin I-beam that he remembered holding in the first week of July 1947. That's when his father, Jesse Marcel Sr., the head of intelligence at the Roswell Army Airfield, woke up Jesse and his mother to show them pieces of strange silver foil and I-beams that Jesse Marcel Sr. had picked up at one of the 3 UFO crash sites that first week of July 1947. This is the one between Roswell and Corona, known as Landing Zone 1. Jesse Marcel Sr. said the metallic foil was like cloth that could be folded or crumpled up, but would always return to its original perfect, flat, unwrinkled shape. Today, we would call it memory metal, but it's taken a long time to get to that now. Jesse Jr. told me his father said the debris, quote, at the kitchen table, he said this to the mother and son, this was not of this earth, close quote. Young Jesse Marcel was most curious about what he described as metallic, pinkish purple hieroglyphs or symbols that ran along the entire length of a tan-colored I-beam only 3/8 of an inch wide. The I-beam was so lightweight that Jesse Jr. said he could barely feel it in his hand. It was more just like the presence of air. Plastics didn't exist publicly in 1947, but eyewitnesses would later on compare the I-beams to a new lightweight plastic or a balsa wood. There were rumors that scientists had discovered the I-beams were an exotic hybrid of metal-like wood, both organic and inorganic molecules mixed in this substance. It could not be cut or burned. Intelligence officer Jesse Marcel Sr. would himself compare the strange pink-purple symbols to, quote, indecipherable Chinese writing, close quote. Perhaps we're back to that word hieroglyphics. 12 years after the 1947 Roswell UFO cover-up began, Brigadier General Stephen Lufkin has said that he was briefed in the Pentagon in 1959, this would be 12 years later, about the Roswell UFO crashes, and he was shown physical I-beams with what he called purplish, and he used the word encryptions. Encryption means encoding messages or information in such a way that only authorized parties can read it. Another source, Steve Lytle, reported that his mathematician father was asked by government authorities to, quote, decipher the I-beam symbols, close quote, but no one was able to, and those weren't the only mysterious symbols to show up on UFOs. In 1803, we're really going back in time, on the east coast of Japan, in the Hitachi province, fishermen reported that a pale, red-headed, alien-looking woman suddenly emerged from under the ocean waters in a round craft that had symbols on its surface. The woman was inside the craft clutching a box. Eyewitnesses called her Utsuro Bune, meaning ship hole, because her sea craft was shaped like a rice bowl. People who saw the craft said the top was like glass or crystal. When the red-haired woman spoke, it was in a language that no Japanese person had ever heard before. What language was she speaking? Where did she come from? What was in that box? Nobody knows. Eyewitnesses claimed the same red-haired woman and craft were reported in other parts of Japan as if she were flying around in the craft. She was always reported to be tightly holding the box. 177 years later, on December 26, 1980, after midnight, Staff Sergeant James Penniston at RAF Bentwaters Woodbridge in England would also encounter a strange craft with symbols in Rendlesham Forest. When Sergeant Penniston dragged his fingers over the symbols, his mind was filled with zeros and ones of binary code and telepathic impressions of a time machine from a distant future where an advanced civilization was dying out. Its mission was to harvest genetic material from Earth to use as, quote, band-aids to extend the future civilization's survival. There was no pilot. The triangular craft operated with alien self-activating software. Now here is a comparison of two Utsuro Bune symbols marked with red circles that are variations on the...
As part 2 is completed, we can certainly see some consistency in the earlier claims of those working on the earlier government classified projects. I, like many of you, also find some very odd instances of coincidence today. On November 13th, 2024, we started to see all the major news organizations discuss an outbreak of drone activity across New Jersey. Postings on social media were everywhere showing these drones people were capturing. These reports suddenly stopped having incidents reported on the national networks after President Biden left office and Trump began his presidency.
We have no evidence at this
It would be
time
illogical for one not to wonder why so many plane crashes have been reported just after these drone sightings have taken place. Here's some very scary, interesting information from the law offices of Arnold and Itkin. The title of the article is 78 Lives Lost, Examining the Surge in 2025 Plane Crashes. And I quote, "Air travel is widely regarded as one of the safest modes of transportation. A 2024 MIT study revealed that commercial air travel has become roughly twice as safe every decade, but recent headlines paint a more sobering picture. On January 29th, 67 people were killed when an American Airlines aircraft collided with an Army helicopter over the Potomac River. Another 10 people were lost on February 6th when a commuter plane crashed in Alaska, leaving wreckage across the Bering Sea. On February 10th, a pilot was killed and 4 passengers were injured when a private jet veered off the runway at Scottsdale Municipal Airport. On February 12th, 2 Navy pilots were forced to eject just before their EA-18G Growler crashed into San Diego Bay. On February 17th, at least 15 people were injured when a Delta flight crashed while landing at Toronto Pearson International Airport. One more not listed on the website, as it just recently happened, is the tragedy of a Bell 206 Long Ranger that claimed the lives of 6 people. A family of 5, and a pilot. We have seen an unusually high number of incidents in early 2025, leading many to question why. Is this sudden wave of airplane accidents truly a statistical outlier, or does it hint at deeper issues like inadequate training, faulty equipment, or lapses in safety oversight? How is it that as our technology gets better with time, that safety when traveling on aircraft wouldn't be better than each previous year? The numbers of deaths listed on this site converts to 19.5 deaths per month from January of 2025 until April pending. There isn't any more fatal aircraft crashes by the end of this month in the United States. It's a good thing the drones knew when to stop making their presence known. I hope you join me for part 3.